Gas fumes choked the air inside the luxury penthouse, burning my lungs. Kenji, the boss of the city's most feared syndicate, stood before me with cold, unhinged eyes. His tailored suit was ruined, splashed with the same gasoline soaking the expensive rugs beneath my feet. In his right hand, a silver lighter flicked open with a sharp metallic click. The bright flame reflected dangerously in his dark eyes. "I'll burn this city down before I let you go, Harper," he whispered. My heart pounded against my ribs, but I didn't beg for my life. Instead, a slow, dark smile spread across my face. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a cracked USB drive, holding it up to the flickering light. "You think you own me, Kenji?" I asked, my voice steady. "You think you saved me from the ashes of my father's clinic?" His confident smirk faltered. I tossed classified inspection reports at his feet. "I know exactly what you did." The lighter trembled. To understand this explosive end, we must rewind. 6 months ago, my world turned to ashes. My father ran a small, free health clinic in the poorest part of our neighborhood. It was his life's work. I was working the late shift when a massive explosion shook the foundation. Thick smoke blinded me instantly, and the blazing heat was unbearable. I barely made it out the back door as the heavy roof caved in. My father didn't make it. As I fell to my knees on the soot-covered pavement, I saw a mysterious figure slipping into the dark alley. The flashing streetlights caught a quick glimpse of his neck. He had a distinct, jagged dragon tattoo creeping up his collar. The police report coldly called it a tragic chemical spill caused by faulty pipes. They closed the case in 3 days. I was left with my father's hidden debts, a ruined life, and a broken heart. I felt utterly hopeless. Then Kenji arrived, promising to fix absolutely everything. Kenji was a wealthy overseas investor. He swept into our district with open checkbooks and men in tailored suits. He paid off the ruined clinic's debts anonymously. When I met him at a community fundraiser, his gaze locked onto mine. He was charming, protective, and devastatingly handsome. He made me feel safe for the first time since the fire. "I am deeply sorry for your loss, Harper," he said gently. His touch sent a warm shiver down my spine. We fell into a whirlwind romance. He was my savior, shielding me from the world. But the perfect fairy tale had a crack. One evening, a waiter accidentally spilled wine on Kenji's jacket. Kenji's right-hand man immediately stepped forward. As the intimidating man turned his head to glare at the waiter, his collar shifted. My blood ran ice cold. There, creeping up the enforcer's neck, was the exact same jagged dragon tattoo I had seen the night my father died. The man's name was Ren. He worked for my boyfriend. I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. Ren's tattoo was a bizarre coincidence. Dragon tattoos are common here, but a seed of doubt had been planted, and it grew deep roots. Kenji's intense protection suddenly felt like a suffocating cage. He bought the lot where my father's clinic once stood, claiming he wanted to build a memorial park. It felt too perfect, too controlling. A few days later, I was cleaning my apartment, a lavish place Kenji paid for, when I knocked over a decorative potted plant he had gifted me. The ceramic pot shattered, scattering wet dirt across the hardwood floor. As I kneeled to clean the spill, a tiny blinking red light caught my eye, hidden among the tangled roots. My breath hitched sharply in my throat. It was a hidden security camera, wired directly into the base of the plant. Kenji wasn't protecting me. He was secretly watching my every move. I sat on the cold floor, my hands shaking violently. I was sleeping with the enemy. I forced myself to smile when Kenji came over that evening. I played the part of the adoring girlfriend, suppressing the terror screaming inside my head. The next day I met my best friend Chloe at a busy coffee shop. I knew there were no hidden cameras there. I told her everything, the dragon tattoo, the hidden camera inside the plant. Chloe's face went pale. "Harper, you have to pack a bag and leave the city right now," she whispered, glancing nervously at the door. "Kenji isn't just an investor. People say he runs the most violent syndicate in the city. If he wanted your dad's land, he wouldn't let a tiny clinic stand in his way." I wanted to deny it, but it made terrifying sense. Chloe swore to help me get out of town safely. We planned to meet at the train station the following night. I went back to Kenji's penthouse, pretending everything was perfectly normal. I packed a small duffel bag. But when I arrived at the dark train station, Chloe never showed up. Panic clawed at my throat as I dialed Chloe's number again and again. It went straight to voicemail. I rushed back to my apartment, terrified. Kenji was already waiting on the leather couch, calmly sipping a glass of scotch. "You look pale, my sweet love. Where have you been?" he asked, his voice smooth and unsettlingly calm. I lied quickly, saying I went for a walk in the rain to clear my head. "Did you happen to see Chloe?" he asked casually. "She texted me earlier, saying she got a sudden job offer across the country. Left immediately." My racing heart stopped. Chloe would never leave without saying goodbye, let alone send a text to the man she was terrified of. Later that night, while Kenji was showering, I nervously searched his heavy coat pockets. My trembling fingers brushed against something hard and familiar. I slowly pulled it out. It was a smartphone with a cracked screen inside a bright pink case. Chloe's phone. He had lied right to my face. He had done something terrible to my best friend. I locked myself in the guest bathroom, my hands shaking violently as I stared down at Chloe's cracked phone. I already knew her passcode. We shared everything. The home screen unlocked, casting bright light into my tear-filled eyes. I went straight into her hidden photo gallery. The last photo she took was timestamped just 3 hours after our meeting. It was a blurry picture taken secretly from an alleyway, showing Ren handing a thick envelope of cash to a man wearing a city inspector's uniform. It was the exact inspector who ruled my father's clinic explosion a terrible accident. Chloe had bravely tried to play detective to help me, and it had cost her everything. A chilling text message popped up on Chloe's screen from an unknown number. "It's done. The snooping girl won't be a problem anymore." A sob ripped from my throat. I pressed my hand over my mouth to muffle the sound. Kenji and Ren had silenced her. I quickly forwarded the evidence to a secure email address, then wiped Chloe's phone clean. Early the next morning, I accompanied Kenji to his corporate office, playing the role of his clueless accessory. Ren stood rigidly by the door. I poured a cup of coffee, stepping close to him. "Ren," I said softly, keeping my eyes on my cup. "I'm worried about Chloe. She just disappeared into thin air." Ren looked coldly down at me, his face devoid of emotion. "People move on, Miss Harper. The boss prefers it when there are no distractions around you. He always gets what he wants." It was a horrifying threat, disguised as polite conversation. He knew I was fishing for answers, and he didn't care. It was the confirmation I desperately needed. Kenji hadn't ordered my father's death just to get the valuable land. He did it to isolate me, to break me down so he could be the savior who picked up the pieces. He wanted to own me completely. Blazing fury replaced my crippling fear. As I walked into Kenji's luxurious office, my mind was firmly made up. I was going to tear his empire down. To destroy Kenji, I needed undeniable proof. The blurry photo of Ren and the inspector wasn't enough to bring down the syndicate. I needed financial records tying Kenji directly to the arson and dirty bribes. Kenji left for a dinner that evening, leaving me alone in the penthouse with a single guard at the door. This was my only chance. I slipped into Kenji's private study, a dark room I was strictly forbidden to enter. It smelled strongly of expensive cigars. I frantically searched the drawers of his massive oak desk, finding nothing but legitimate business contracts. My frustration mounted. I desperately scanned the room, my anxious eyes settling on a large, abstract painting hanging awkwardly behind his desk. It looked slightly crooked. I carefully lifted the heavy wooden frame away from the wall. My breath caught in my throat. Hidden safely behind the artwork was a sleek, digital wall safe built directly into the solid steel frame of the building. The keypad glowed with a faint blue light. I had found his dark secrets, but I only had minutes. I stared blankly at the glowing digital keypad, my mind racing. 3 incorrect strikes and the safe would lock down or trigger a silent alarm to Kenji's phone. I nervously tried his birthday. Incorrect. I tried the date we first met. Incorrect. Cold sweat beaded on my forehead. I had one final attempt left before the system locked me out. What specific date mattered most to an obsessive mind? What was the day he cleared the path to capture me? My trembling fingers typed in a new set of numbers. The exact date my father's clinic burned to the ground. The keypad instantly flashed green. A soft click echoed loudly in the quiet room, and the heavy steel door swung open. Inside rested a thick black leather ledger and a stack of crisp blueprints. I pulled the blueprints out and unrolled them on the desk. They were detailed architectural plans of my entire neighborhood, drawn up over a year ago. My father's clinic was crossed out with a violent red marker. He had coldly planned the murder of my father long before he pretended to be my hero. I reached into the safe for the black leather ledger. Flipping through the pages, I found exactly what I needed. A handwritten record of every dirty payoff Kenji had made. There were massive sums of money transferred to the city inspector, the police chief, and the corrupted judge handling zoning laws. It was the ultimate smoking gun. Suddenly, the heavy oak door of the study clicked open. "Harper?" Kenji's deep voice echoed in the room. Blind panic seized me. I shoved the ledger and blueprints back into the safe, slammed the steel door shut, and yanked the large painting back into place just as he walked around the corner. I instantly dropped to my knees on the expensive rug. "What are you doing in here?" he asked, his dark eyes narrowing suspiciously. "I lost the diamond earring you gave me," I lied, my voice shaking in a way that mimicked real fear. Kenji's terrifying expression instantly softened. He knelt beside me, gently tilting my chin up. "Don't cry, my sweet love. I'll buy you 100 more, especially since our wedding is tomorrow." My blood ran ice cold. The hidden safe was locked again, and I was locked out. I needed help from the outside to copy those files and take Kenji down before our forced wedding tomorrow. I instantly thought of Detective Miller. He was an old, trusted friend of my father, an honest cop who used to eat dinner at our house. He was the only person in the corrupt police force I thought I could genuinely trust. I managed to sneak a burner phone from a convenience store while running an errand with Kenji's guards. Hiding safely in a restroom stall, I nervously dialed Miller's private cell number. "Uncle Miller, it's Harper," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I have solid proof that the clinic fire wasn't an accident. Kenji's syndicate did it. They have the city inspector on the payroll. I desperately need your help." There was a long, agonizing silence on the other end. "Harper, sweetie, where exactly are you?" he finally asked, his voice sounding tight. "Meet me at the old abandoned rail yard at midnight. Come alone. I can get you protective custody." The abandoned rail yard was a creepy graveyard of rusting trains and overgrown weeds, bathed in the pale light of a full moon. I stood shivering violently in the cold night air, tightly clutching the burner phone. Bright headlights suddenly cut through the darkness as an unmarked police car rolled to a stop. Detective Miller stepped out carefully, looking older and more tired than I remembered. "Harper," he sighed heavily, walking slowly toward me. "I'm incredibly glad you called me." I started to tell him about the hidden safe, the black ledger, and the architectural blueprints. But as he stepped fully into the moonlight, I noticed something shiny resting in his right hand. It wasn't a police badge. It was a heavy black pistol, pointed directly at my pounding chest. "I'm really sorry, kid," Miller said, his rough voice completely devoid of any real emotion. "Kenji honestly pays far better than the city ever did. He told me you might figure things out eventually. He said to bring you home unharmed." My racing heart plummeted into my stomach. The deep corruption had infected the only man I trusted. Miller cocked the gun. "I'm not going back to him," I yelled. Pure adrenaline flooded my system. I threw the flashlight directly at Miller's surprised face. It struck him hard on the jaw. He stumbled backward painfully, his heavy gun firing wildly up into the dark night sky. The deafening, terrifying crack echoed loudly through the empty rail yard. I didn't wait to see if he recovered. I spun around and sprinted blindly into the confusing maze of rusted train cars. My boots slammed loudly against the loose gravel as I ran desperately in the dark. I heard Miller shouting and cursing angrily behind me, his heavy, thudding footsteps crunching loudly in pursuit. I frantically scrambled up the shaky ladder of a rusted freight car and leaped onto the slippery roof, sliding down the other side, directly into a deep ditch filled with muddy water. I held my breath tightly, hiding completely in the deep shadows, as Miller's flashlight beam swept slowly over the train tracks just mere inches above my hidden head. "You can't hide forever, Harper," he yelled out into the night. He was right. Running wasn't enough. I had to destroy the monster from the inside. I walked exhaustedly for several hours until I finally reached a very busy, bright city intersection. I deliberately and carefully stepped out directly in front of a slow-moving yellow taxi. The startled car slammed its brakes hard. bumping my hip and knocking me safely to the pavement. A concerned crowd gathered instantly around me. I quickly borrowed a kind bystander's phone and called the one person who would definitely come running. 10 short minutes later, Kenji's sleek black SUV squealed to a sudden halt at the busy curb. He leaped out wildly, pushing aggressively through the shocked crowd, his dark eyes wild with pure panic. "Harper!" he yelled loudly, dropping straight to his knees right beside me. He scooped me quickly into his strong arms, his handsome face looking unusually pale. "I've got you. You're completely safe now." He played the deeply terrified, loving boyfriend absolutely perfectly. As he gently carried me to his warm car, I buried my face deep in his chest, sobbing incredibly fake tears of relief. While he was totally distracted by his own twisted relief, my fingers expertly slipped deeply into the inner breast pocket of his tailored suit jacket. I firmly pinched the smooth plastic of his master keycard. The cage was now mine. Kenji carefully took me back to the quiet penthouse and strongly insisted I rest deeply in bed. He lovingly placed a gentle kiss right on my forehead and left to handle his highly important business, securely locking the heavy front doors behind him. As soon as the deadbolt clicked shut, I was completely out of bed. The stolen master keycard I had taken wasn't just for normal doors. It granted full access to the syndicate's secret underground server room, located deep in the basement of his massive corporate tower. I easily sneaked out through the penthouse's private, hidden service elevator. The dark basement was incredibly freezing, constantly humming with the loud sound of massive computer towers. I confidently swiped Kenji's stolen card at the heavy, thick glass doors. The security light flashed a bright green. I was successfully in. I plugged my small USB drive directly into the main computer terminal. The bright screen instantly prompted me for an administrative password. My cold fingers flew rapidly across the keyboard, typing in the exact date of the tragic clinic fire. Access granted. I began quickly downloading absolutely everything: years of illegal financial transactions, heavy bribery records, and the dark assassination orders. Suddenly, the bright fluorescent lights overhead flickered wildly and completely died. Someone had deliberately cut the main power. Bright emergency red lights suddenly bathed the dark server room in a sinister, bloody glow. I frantically yanked the USB drive from the computer, clutching it incredibly tightly in my sweaty fist. A dark, terrifying shadow detached itself from the open doorway. It was Ren. The jagged dragon tattoo heavily inked on his neck looked exactly like it was writhing in the red light. He slowly pulled a long, wicked combat knife right from his black belt. "The boss already knew you were far too smart to just sit still," Ren said, his raspy voice echoing loudly in the hum of the backup generators. I backed away quickly, my racing heart hammering painfully. "You killed my poor father, Ren." He paused slightly, twirling the sharp knife. "I just lit the tiny match." Kenji gave the absolute order. He lunged aggressively at me. I threw a heavy keyboard straight at his face, dodging his deadly blade by mere inches. I scrambled clumsily over a desk, kicking a heavy rolling chair directly into his path. Ren stumbled hard but very quickly recovered, tightly pinning me directly against a tall server rack. The freezing cold steel of his sharp knife pressed hard against my throat. I closed my eyes tightly, but the deadly cut never came. Ren leaned in close. "Take the drive. Ruin him." I didn't pause to question Ren's incredibly sudden betrayal. The powerful syndicate was heavily built on total loyalty, but Kenji's deep madness had completely fractured his own solid foundation. I sprinted wildly out of the dark building and quickly melted into the city's bright neon-lit crowds. I ducked quickly into a crowded, all-night internet cafe, making sure to keep my head completely down. My cold hands shook violently as I plugged the USB drive into a dirty public computer. I couldn't just hand this over to the corrupt police. Miller proved they were entirely compromised. I needed the whole entire world to quickly see it. I quickly coded a complex dead man switch, a timed, fully automated program that would blast the files directly to every major news network, the FBI headquarters, and rival syndicate bosses simultaneously. I set the countdown timer for exactly 2 hours. If I didn't manually stop the ticking clock, Kenji's entire empire would be totally exposed. I slipped the tiny USB drive securely back into my pocket. My cell phone suddenly vibrated sharply. It was a terrifying text message from Kenji. "Come back to the penthouse, Harper. We are officially leaving the country tonight. Just you and me. Forever." It was a deadly command. He knew I had run. I bravely headed straight back into the lion's den. The slow elevator ride up to the top penthouse felt exactly like a terrifying journey. The shiny doors chimed open to reveal Kenji's private, heavily armed guards stationed absolutely everywhere. The luxurious apartment was in total chaos, with angry men hurriedly packing huge bags and loudly shredding important documents. Kenji stood perfectly still in the very center of the large living room, staring darkly out at the bright city skyline. When he finally turned to slowly face me, the incredibly charming mask was completely gone. His dark eyes were utterly cold, highly calculating, and terrifyingly empty. "Did you honestly think you could successfully run from me, Harper?" he asked very quietly. "I completely own the dirty streets you walk on. I absolutely own the very air you breathe." I stood my solid ground bravely. "I'm not running anymore, Kenji. I'm completely done running." He took a slow, menacing step toward me, his dark presence highly suffocating. "I know you secretly went to the underground server room. Ren told me absolutely everything right before I put a hollow bullet deep in his head for letting you slip away." A horrifying chill ran rapidly down my spine. Ren was totally dead. Kenji was brutally tying up his loose ends. "We are getting on a private jet in exactly 30 minutes, Kenji loudly commanded. "The strict lockdown is complete. No one is ever coming for you." "I'm absolutely not going anywhere with you," I said loudly, my shaking voice rising in total defiance. Kenji chuckled darkly, a horrifying, humorless sound that chilled me right to the bone. He snapped his long fingers loudly. Two massive guards quickly stepped forward, grabbing my arms painfully and forcing me down to my knees directly on the expensive Persian rug. Kenji slowly reached into his tailored suit pocket and successfully pulled out a shiny silver object. My racing breath completely hitched. He held up a tiny USB drive, the exact same common make and standard model as the one I had secretly taken from the dark server room. "Is this silly thing what gave you such incredible false bravery, my sweet love?" he mocked cruelly, turning the plastic drive over in his smooth fingers. "Did you honestly think I wouldn't have my expensive systems rigged to instantly alert me when a massive data download occurred? Did you actually think I wouldn't track you down and intercept the secret package before you could do any real damage?" He violently threw the tiny USB drive onto the heavy glass coffee table. It completely shattered upon impact. My heavy heart instantly dropped. He had intercepted it. The crucial evidence was gone. The dead man's switch was totally useless. I looked up at him, pure terror finally breaking through my brave facade. Kenji had officially won. The trap was permanently shut. Kenji paced the large room, his deep obsession finally bleeding into pure, terrifying madness. He forcefully grabbed a heavy, antique metal gas canister right from the elegant fireplace display. It was a purely decorative piece he kept fully filled for the extremely rare occasions he actually lit the hearth. He wildly unscrewed the metal cap and rapidly began pouring the clear gasoline directly onto the incredibly expensive rugs, the plush white sofas, and the beautiful painted walls. The sharp, highly toxic smell of the strong fuel completely choked the thick air in the luxury penthouse. The armed guards quickly and silently backed completely out of the room, leaving just the two of us entirely alone in the fumes. "If you absolutely won't leave with me completely willingly, Harper, then we simply won't leave at all," Kenji said, his angry voice dropping down to a highly dangerous whisper. "I destroyed your poor father. I completely destroyed your friends. I built this massive empire purely for you, and I will happily destroy it for you." He stood tall before me with completely cold, totally unhinged eyes. In his right hand, a shiny silver lighter flicked open with a sharp metallic click. The terrifying moment from my worst nightmares had finally arrived. "I'll entirely burn this city down before I let you go, Harper," he promised. My racing heart pounded wildly against my ribs exactly like a trapped bird, but I absolutely didn't beg for my life. I didn't cry a single tear. The deep fear that had totally gripped me just mere moments before completely and suddenly evaporated, instantly replaced by a very cold, highly calculating calm. Instead of weakly cowering, a slow, very dark smile spread largely across my brave face. I stood up tall, completely ignoring the toxic fumes violently burning my watering eyes. I calmly reached deep into my warm coat pocket and successfully pulled out a small, slightly cracked USB drive, proudly holding it high up to the flickering light of his open lighter. Kenji's overly confident smirk completely faltered. He looked quickly down at the broken, shattered plastic sitting on his glass coffee table, then slowly back up at the real drive held firmly in my hand. "You honestly think you fully own me, Kenji?" I loudly asked, my clear voice remaining incredibly steady and highly victorious. "The stupid drive you proudly intercepted was just a cheap decoy. I happily bought it at the internet cafe. All it actually had heavily installed on it was a highly active GPS tracker. That specific tracker just successfully led the entire FBI task force directly to your highly hidden offshore accounting firm." Kenji's sweaty hand trembled violently, the bright flame of the shiny lighter wavering weakly. "It absolutely doesn't matter at all," he loudly snarled, desperately trying hard to quickly regain his total control. "You're obviously still fully trapped in here entirely with me. If I quickly burn this entire room, the precious evidence permanently burns right along with us. You will die with me tonight, Harper." He moved his hand slowly down to easily drop the lit lighter directly onto the heavily gasoline-soaked rug. "I really wouldn't do that at all," I calmly said, confidently pointing directly to the small, blinking red light perfectly centered on the round smoke detector located directly above our heads. Kenji instantly froze, looking rapidly up at the ceiling. "That's not a normal smoke detector, Kenji. It's a completely hidden, high-definition, wireless security camera, and it's absolutely not securely linked to your heavily protected private server." Kenji's handsome face completely drained of all its healthy color. I smiled very widely, the amazing taste of sweet, perfect revenge resting delightfully on my tongue. "When I was hiding safely down in your freezing server room, I absolutely didn't just quickly download files. I brilliantly rerouted all your highly personal security camera feeds. The whole entire city is currently eagerly watching you fail, Kenji." The silver lighter instantly slipped right from Kenji's violently trembling fingers. I lunged incredibly forward and quickly caught it safely midair right before it could tragically hit the highly gasoline-soaked floor. I loudly snapped it entirely shut, plunging the dangerous room quickly back into tense, heavy shadows. Kenji immediately collapsed heavily down to his knees, his shaking hands tightly clutching his bowed head. The perfectly untouchable Mafia boss was incredibly and completely broken, totally ruined by his absolute own terrible arrogance and deep, sick obsession. The heavy, thick oak doors of the luxury penthouse suddenly burst entirely open. A highly armed, tactical SWAT team rapidly flooded the large room, their bright red laser sights dancing wildly all across Kenji's expensive chest. "Put your hands high in the air. Get completely down on the ground," a very loud, commanding officer fiercely screamed. Kenji didn't try to fight back at all. He quietly allowed them to roughly press his handsome face deeply into the totally ruined, smelly carpet and securely lock incredibly heavy steel cuffs tightly around his wrists. A tall FBI agent quickly approached me, gently taking the incredibly valuable real USB drive right from my shaking hand. "You did incredibly good tonight, kid," she said very quietly. "We currently have tactical teams successfully raiding his illegal properties. It's completely over now." I proudly turned my strong back on him and calmly walked straight out. I stood safely on the cold sidewalk directly outside the towering glass building, tightly pulling my warm coat closely against the freezing night wind. Loud police sirens wailed continuously in absolutely every single direction, a totally chaotic, wonderful symphony, beautifully marking the utter fall of an evil tyrant. My cell phone suddenly buzzed in my pocket. It was a wonderful text message originating from an unknown number. "I'm completely safe. I'm actively watching the breaking news. I love you so much." It was my best friend Chloe. She had miraculously survived the terrible ordeal. A deeply genuine, very bright smile broke fully across my tired face, feeling incredibly warm and undeniably real. The busy city around me was deeply scarred, and the painful memory of my dear father's ruined clinic would sadly always carry the incredibly heavy weight of profound grief. But the dark, scary shadows absolutely no longer controlled my free life. Kenji foolishly thought his massive wealth and unlimited power could easily buy my complete, unquestioning obedience. He crazily thought burning my entire beautiful world entirely down would simply make me run directly back to him for safety. Never, ever ignore the quiet whispers of your deep intuition, because the exact person generously offering you an umbrella might very well just be the very one who purposely called down the terrible rain.